Welcome to Global Morning.
Death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure. If you don't say we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
A great morning it is, no doubt about that. Thank you again, everyone, for taking our time to join us this Tuesday morning, second business day of the week, third day of the week overall, and we count it an honor to have you make our time every other morning to join us here on Global Television. I'm Uyag Mofwegwe, welcoming you to Global Morning. My colleague, who has an amazing mix of colors this morning, is also on the program.
Good morning. And it's a pleasure to be on the program with you. Always a pleasure.
All right, Queen Agaba, let me do the introduction real quick. Of course, it's a pleasure to do this together every Tuesday morning. So this team will bring you so much this morning in terms of big conversations across our country and even beyond. Perhaps one brilliant place to start from is the development in Plateau states. All right, they say there ought to be peace on the plateau, but that hasn't been the reality in very recent times, and that's quite concerning. After the carnage that we saw not too long ago, and everybody, well-meaning Nigerians, condemning those attacks, we are hearing now that there have been fresh attacks leading to loss of 51 lives, to the point that the president perhaps is now left with no other option than to declare that, order that an onslaught also be carried out against these criminal elements on the plateau. You know, time and again, you and I have talked about Benue State here, how that people can't go to their farms, people are even afraid to return to their ancestral homes. But now, this is apparently far beyond Benue State.
Yeah, and it's always sad. It's always a sad occurrence that nobody prays for a repeat or a reoccurrence.
Right.
Particularly when it concerns lives and, properties. Now it's not just people's farmlands, it's not just their properties. We're talking about human beings, 51 persons. And this is not the first time, this is not even the 10th time we have been hearing about killings in Plateau State. One that has been in the news over time has been the Bokos area, Bokos local government of Plateau. And it's so sad to see that, these things still reoccur, these incidences still reoccur. It boils down to the question of where have we missed it? How can we correct it? What can we do? I keep saying it that we cannot do same thing over and over again and expect a different result.
Right.
We need to start putting in measures, putting in strategies to ensure that, perpetrators of this act are brought to book and there's never a reoccurrence.
Right.
But most of the time when incidences like this happen, what we hear is, the president is commiserating or is, giving out condolences and his heartfelt messages to families of victims, and that security agencies are working to ensure that the perpetrators of these incidences are brought to book. But we never really hear,
Real-time prosecution.
Right. We never really follow up these stories, just the surface level attack or surface level measure to ensure that, there's calm.
Not far-reaching enough.
Not far-reaching enough. Sometimes, the victims, most of these victims are breadwinners of their families, Sometimes these victims are people's parents, So there's no compensation, there's no, just mere words of affirmation and all of that. And then securities, we just hear just surface level basically measures. But we never really attack the root causes of these incidences, the borders in these villages, what are the are the vigilantes well equipped, security personnel who are in these local government areas? I mean, that's what I keep saying. Particularly today, my tone is down because this is not the first time we've had such incidences. And, there's a reoccurrence. It just means that there's something we're not doing right. And we need to go back to the book and go back to the root causes of these incidences and implement, stronger strategies to ensure that there's never a reoccurrence.
That part is where the real work is, Queen, where you have to talk about how we can or should forestall a recurrence, right? Just barely a week ago, the governor of Borno State, Professor Babangana Zulum, came out and said, look, this may not be exactly, but the message was very clear that, look, we're overwhelmed. Boko Haram is gaining ground.
Too much.
All right? This is the governor of the state, the chief executive of the state, the chief security officer, at least in principle, of the states, saying that this is becoming overwhelming for us, right? We need help as quickly as possible. We have heard about states up north, particularly in the northeast, for example, where you hear of instances of local governments, sometimes multiple of them, being taken over by criminal elements. Bandits today, Boko Haram tomorrow, ISWAP the day that follows, and you just have this happening again and again. In 2025, it takes a lot of balls for a serving governor, or as we say here, a sitting governor, right, to come out in public and say that this is becoming more than we can handle. So the question is, between when Professor Zulum made that statement and this morning, while we're live on this program, what are the measures that have been taken to step up counter-attack, or if you like, counter-offensive, as they say in defense, against those behind all of this? And then you also need to look at what are the systemic factors that drive insecurity. Is it just people carrying guns and coming to villages at night and killing people? Is it people brandishing knives and taking out people while they are asleep? What exactly are the causes? What is the roots of all of this? Who are those behind? It's not enough to say we condemn this and all this ramification.
Absolutely.
Those are rhetorics that Nigerians have been used to for more than a decade.
Tired of.
But the question now in practice is, in practical terms, is what exactly are the states doing, the subnationals, especially in these regions where insecurity has become so rife that people are afraid to sleep with even one eye closed? And then you're asking yourself, how much more investment have we made in our military, in our defense systems? Today we hear, we are combining kinetic and non-kinetic measures. Exactly. The everyday Nigerian does not have the bandwidth to understand what kinetic and non-kinetic mean. All they want to see is improvement in the way we deal with insecurity. What are we learning from models that have been used by countries that had similar challenges and were able to win over time? How much of sincerity or purpose are we bringing into the conversation? Peter Obi was complaining again on X, I think that was at about, yesterday evening, right? About how that he had been visiting a few places, starting with the Bokos issue in Plateau State, and he was warmly received by the governor of that state, all right, to also reach out on humanitarian grounds, purely, he says, on humanitarian grounds to some of these people who have been adversely impacted by all of these issues. And they wanted to also do the same by extension to Benue, but from what he said, the governor had already put out, the state government had put out a statement saying that such visits are not welcome, that security of the lives of people who embark on such visits cannot be guaranteed. Meanwhile, he says he was en route already, he was on his way to Benue. Of course, he had to do everything and then, as I say, change course, that sort of thing. But isn't that a reflection that, as is always the case, we are politicizing all of these issues? And the man mentioned quite frankly the places he had intended to visit, all right, a nursing facility, IDP camp, and all of those facilities where you have humanitarian efforts being beefed up and so on and so forth. And he says these are things he had done time and again, not just in Nigeria alone, even in places like Haiti, for example, when they also had their own calamity on account of the earthquake back in the day and so on and so forth. Which means that while we are using kinetic and non-kinetic efforts to fight all of these criminal elements, we must also understand that there's a humanitarian angle to all of this. People have been bereaved. People have lost loved ones. How do we reach out to them? How do we cater to them?
Absolutely.
These are issues that should take the front burner as against the 2027 politicking, all right? Because 2027 will come and go. but human beings will always be here. In any case, it is people that will go out to vote on election days on 2027. So let's keep the main thing. Let's realign our priorities, because that has always been one of the fundamental problems in this country, where we make a lot of noise about superficial pedestrian issues, and then when it's time to pay attention to the real issues, we wave them off with the left hand and just move on to issues about politics. But enough said. But the issue of insecurity is something that is
very, very worrisome.
I
think that we need to have leaders who, I will always see, put people first.
Right.
That's the people are your priority. They're the ones you've been called to serve. They elected you into office. Even though what we see most of these days is that we see forgery and a lot of manipulations when it comes to elections. But even regardless, some people say, what do you expect from a system that, or systems where, that was marred with a whole lot of irregularities, malpractices in some states and all of that we see? What is the outcome? It shows that, where states where election took place and then people were killed, it means that, for votes, just to win election, it means that the people were never the core of, some of these states. But I just think that we can still, first of all, we're humans. Beyond the positions, beyond politics, we're humans. And the lives and properties, the security of people should be core, should be vital, should be number one, regardless of whatever it is that we're pursuing. Let us ensure that lives are saved. At the end of the day, it is these people who will in turn vote again in 2027 election. What happens in a situation where an entire state, an entire village, an entire neighborhood is wiped out? Because if we don't take stronger measures and strategies, these people will continue to gain stronger grounds and do all sorts. And we must also understand that, this insecurity is also affecting us as a nation. Our reputation outside, our image, global image, international image is affected. So we should ensure that, we put out strategies. Take, for instance, Jos. We're talking about the Plateau now, where we have quite a number of foreigners who are residents in Plateau State, coming around to do business, to just tour the place. And when we continue to put Plateau in the news, or when Plateau is constantly in the news for these kinds of incidences, it's going to affect business in Plateau State. It's going to affect a whole lot for not just Plateau State, but Nigeria as a whole. So we must ensure that there's never a reoccurrence. I think that's where we now begin to think that we have people and security agencies and leaders who are thinking right. When there's an occurrence like this, we should put out measures to ensure that the perpetrators are not only brought to book, but that also there's never a reoccurrence of these sad incidences.
Well, that's what we'll leave it with security concerns, at least for a minute. Let's take a breather now as we go on a short break. On the flip side of it, we'll talk a little more, and then, of course, we'll bring you big headlines from across our national dailies. Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
And the president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Well, many thanks for staying with us on the program. It's time for us to bring the papers for you. And this morning, we are looking at the Daily Sun newspaper. On the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper, big story says, "We'll stand with Fubara till end, vow PDP governors." And then we have Plateau killings. 51 get mass burial as death toll hits 53. Resolve underlying cause of crisis. President tells Plateau governor. And then Atiku laments killings and lampoons federal government. The big story that says, "We'll stand with Fubara till end." The writer there says, "Insists party not joining coalition. Appoint new acting secretary." Then we have recapitalization and tariff war. No cause for alarm. Banks on sound footing, says CBN. And then my tortuous road to becoming AFDB president by the president of the African Development Bank. And then we have Rivers administrator, MBA biker, over 300 million confab hosting fees. At the foot of the paper, we still have insecurity. Kalu warns against politicization, calls for decisive measures. And lastly, on the Daily Sun, we have federal government declares national emergency on food security. You know, just to talk about this last headline where the federal government is calling, you know, it's declaring national emergency on food security. I think it still boils down to the fact that security is still a threat. The security of, you know, farmers cannot guarantee their safety. And so this is what happens when the lives of farmers, the lives of people who, you know, do the work in the field are not, you know, they're not protected. They can't guarantee their safety. This is what happens. Right. We begin to have food insecurity. We have shortages because people are not actively going to their farms, because as a result of this crisis that we see farmers run away from their farmlands. We see abandoned farmlands, abandoned, you know, villages, houses, and what have you. I think the problem should be we need emergency in the area of security. Security. If not, we'll continue declaring a state of emergency or declaring an emergency across all sectors, not just for food alone. So we need to, as a matter of urgency, look into our security architecture and also put measures in place, our borders, our porous borders, and what have you, to ensure that, you know, lives are protected. Only if we take such measures can we now begin to secure other areas properly.
Interesting. My angle to this is that I remember clearly, soon after President Bola Tinubu took office in 2023, that should be sometime around June, July, there was a state of emergency declared. It should be July of 2023, almost 2 years ago, declared on the same food security, all right? The idea was to ramp up efforts to ensure that there was sufficiency of food, at least for domestic consumption, and then afterwards you probably can start talking about exporting. Question is, between then and now, what have we done differently in terms of the approach? So most times it's not just about the talk. I think we are very big on talk. We need to give ourselves flowers. We need to give ourselves all the trophies for that. However, do we match words with action? That's the point. What was the action plan at that time when we declared emergency, state of emergency on food security? Who exactly were we supposed to hold accountable? Who was supposed to midwife that process? Challenges in Nigeria, you don't always have people to hold accountable when things go south. And that's why even when things turn out well, we also don't commend people enough, because you don't have that system, we lack that structure to drive growth, to drive implementation of whatever plan that we have. We have declared another one. This is April now, for example. By end of year, which would have been 7 months afterwards, the question is, what exactly would have changed for the better on that front? All right. are we addressing issues around insecurity? I watched this man whose song just got banned by the NBC recently, Idris Abdul Karim, when he was saying that he has a farm in the same Plateau State that we've been talking about the whole morning on the program, where he farms moringa and something berry and all of that. But he can't go there. He and his family can't go there now for obvious reasons, insecurity. Now, Idris is just one of the many Nigerians, in their hundreds of thousands, maybe in their millions, who can't go to farms across this country for the same reason. Now, these things are not going to happen like you have in a Nollywood movie. If you can't address insecurity, if you can't address access to inputs, if you can't address access to seedling things like a capital for those who are doing something beyond subsistence farming, the question is, how are you going to come through with your plan regarding state of emergency on food security?
Absolutely, absolutely well said. Well, these are the stories we have on the front page of the Daily Sun. Our next point of call.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Trust newspaper for you quickly, everyone. On the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, what we have is, let's see, first of all, the big one here says bloodletting. What does it say about bloodletting? Here it says bloodletting continues in Plateau with a rider that tells us 49 killed in fresh attack. We talked about that just a while ago, and how sad this incident has become. It has been one attack after another, one nasty incident too many. That's just our headline on the front page of Daily Trust this Tuesday morning. Let's take it a notch higher for you. Top left, 4 trillion naira debt. That's the kicker. Blackout looms as Gencos threaten shut down. Rivers emergency rule, court orders service on Tinubu, Ibas, Fubara. Gunmen abduct worshippers on Lokoja Mountain. This is in Kogi State. PDP governors meet, reject coalition. 2 riders with the headline, PDP governors meet, reject coalition. The first one says, propose NEC for May 27, convention August 28. How rejection could affect Atiku. Professor Kari is the one to whom that is credited. But then Atiku, we understand now, is calling the bluff of the PDP governors and other prominent leaders in the party. He's going ahead with his own arrangements as against what the PDP governors are moving to do at this point. Well, 2027 is dicey. 2027 is thick, and it just thinkings further as we draw closer to the electioneering period proper. And then, of course, as expected, it's obvious that Mr. Atiku is not done running. All right, so he's going to throw his heart in the ring again, most likely in 2027, this time for the 7th time. And he's not going to allow PDP governors or any other structure within the party to stop him. Now, let's not forget that he's a legacy member of the party. I mean, right from 1998, he's been there. He's a 2-time vice president of this country. He has been seen as the leader of this party for a long time, even though he's been in and out as well, like many other stalwarts of the party. Let's also put on record that as it stands today, it will appear the soul of PDP as a political party is being fought over by 2 big elephants, Atiku Abubakar and Nyesom Wike. And so you have the 2 camps, the 2 major camps in the PDP split between these 2 gentlemen. But how this will eventually pan out will be determined by a couple of factors, including how the maneuvering into 2027 will be done. But that's all we have for you on Daily Trust this morning. We encourage you to grab a copy and read up details for yourself. Next port of call is the Vanguard newspaper.
Well, on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, big story. The Plateau is there again. It says Plateau, Benue killings. Governor Alia threatens, Tinubu gives Mufwang marching orders. And then family of 8 wiped out. Oh my goodness. Armed headers kill 52 in fresh Sunday night attack. Victims given mass burial. Government expresses displeasure. And then troops rescue 16 kidnapped victims. Christian leaders plan protest over killings. I can't guarantee visitors to Benue without my knowledge, Governor Alia. I am target of Benue governor's threat. says Peter Obi. So we have Plateau and Benue as the big stories here on the Vanguard newspaper.
And these are neighbors.
These are neighboring states. And then protest in Rivers for emergency rule. We see pictures, pictorial evidences here. And then emergency rule, pro, anti-Fubar, women protest, rock Rivers. And then NFF denies owing late chairman Chuku. Well, these are the stories we have on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper.
All right, let's flip it over quickly to the Nation newspaper, everyone. We'll begin with the headlines just above the name master of the Nation newspaper this morning, with a picture of the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, NBA, talking about Afam Osigwe SAN. Here it says, NBA, your kicker, 300 million naira collected from Rivers on conditional gift. The writer says Ibas demands repay of Confab hosting cash. That's been the back and forth, really. The government in River State talking about this administrator in River State is saying that, look, 300 million naira have been given to the leadership of the NBA with regards to the AGC, that's the annual general conference that was supposed to hold, that was earlier planned to hold in the state, but now has been moved. And now the leadership of the NBA says we're moving our conference from River State, from Port Harcourt, the capital city in particular, on account of this emergency kind of system, the administrative kind of system that has been set up, because they say they're not comfortable with the fact that elected officers have been sent out of office, and then in their place you brought in an administrator that is unknown to the constitution, is alien to Nigerian laws. However, the NBA is also telling the administrator in River State that, look, that money, the 300 million naira, was given to the association as an unconditional gift by the suspended governor of Fubara. Therefore, there's no basis for a refund. Now, some analysts are wondering, could this also lead to any form of litigation at some point, because River State administrator calls it hosting funds. And the NBA is saying that there's nothing hosting about it. It's not an obligation. Therefore, all it is at best is some sort of unconditional gift. But we keep an eye out and see where this is going to head in the days, weeks, and months ahead. But the conference itself, which has now been moved to Enugu, the coal city, is just more like an arm stretch away. So by the time it's all said and done, how much of impact will this back and forth really have? We wait to see. All right, averting judgments. Oh yeah, you're going to react to that, or you are bothered that you didn't get a cut of the money.
We're looking forward to the outcome of this.
Right, exactly. All right, let's continue with the headlines from the Nation newspaper, everyone. Okay, averting judgment misinterpretation, how to attain $1 trillion economy by central bank. Read up those details on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. NLC Apapa flex muscles over LP. Quite some drama happening inside our party right now, because once the Supreme Court, that is ruled that Abure and his ESCO must leave office as quickly as possible. In fact, immediately we saw Lamidi Apapa also call a press conference with a few other members of the Labour Party with him, saying that he is the most senior vice chairman of the party, and as such there's no better person to step into these shoes. I don't know what the size of those shoes really is that Mr. Abure has left behind than himself. But then we also saw on that same day Peter Obi and the governor of Abia State, Alex Oti, go to the headquarters of INEC to say, look, this is the true certified copy, the CTC of the judgments delivered by the Supreme Court. But of course, INEC knows better. INEC has some of the finest lawyers, so they understand what the law says about things like this, regardless of those who are now jostling to lead the Labour Party, especially towards 2027. But we're not done just yet with the headlines from the Nation newspaper. Let's go ahead and see a few more for you. All right. Here it says that Tinubu supported my bid for speaker despite not knowing me, says Tajuddin. Politicians will always be politicians. But let's look at the star headline this morning. The kicker is 2027. PDP governors disown Atiku on coalition merger. So it's more like saying you are on your own on this one. We can't dictate for you, but we are not behind you in this move. All right. The kickers here tell us, the writers, I should say, tell us Ayawu Ude Okoye rejected as secretary. We understand that the party's leadership, especially the Nigerian governors, I should say the PDP Governors Forum is now saying, look, we have actually picked an interim secretary, someone to be in acting capacity, all right, because we are picking neither Ude Okoye nor the other gentleman, Uncle Sam, and this is fondly called. All right, let's see what more we have for you this morning here. Tinubu asks Plateau to confront ethno-religious crisis behind killings. That's going to be more than just giving an order or directive. 51 killed in another attack on communities. That's talking about Plateau still. All right, and then lastly here it says Olawepo Hashim cautions against ethnic politics. Find those details on page 27 of today's issue of the Nation newspaper. JAMB warns against illegal admission. All right, we can't have that conversation enough, but let's move on to this day newspaper real quick.
Well, on the front page of this day newspaper, we have big story. It says 2027. Okay, I beg your pardon. It says at APC leaders visits to Buhari, Ganduje says Atiku, El-Rufai's coalition talks doomed to fail. And then we have in a reconciliatory Tinubu, Atiku, Sanwo-Olu, Mba orders Mon ex-Super Eagles coach Christian Chukwu. And then in a reconciliatory move, PDP governors summon emergency meeting of all party organs. We also have China to Okonjo-Iweala. U.S. tariffs will inflict serious harm on developing countries. Says Trump's tariffs bringing enormous uncertainty, instability to the world. To file a lawsuit with World Trade Organization over the levies. And then we have federal government. Security situation in Nigeria grossly misrepresented at U.S. congressional hearing. And we see a picture of the former president of Nigeria and then the APC national chairman. This is strategic consultation ahead of 2027.
Yeah, with emphasis on strategic, right?
Yes, strategic consultation.
Has to be.
Well, these are the stories we have on the front page of this day. I'm wondering why the Plateau killing is not highlighted here on the front page of this day newspaper.
Okay, well, let's flip to the Punch newspaper now. Let's start with the star headline for you. 2027, that's on the Punch newspaper. 2027, Atiku bloc defies PDP governors over coalition talks. It will appear a party that was already depleted is facing further depletion at this point. All right, the writer tells us here, ex-VP insists on 2027 pan-Nigerian projects as PDP governors distance party from coalition talks. And then I just sent the nameplates with the picture of the president, Bola Tinubu. Tinubu orders an offensive as fresh Plateau attack leaves 51 dead. Far above the nameplates, top right corner, with a picture of Minister of Power, Chief Adelabu, it says FG scrambles to avert Genco's shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt. Now, the generation companies talking about several kinds of debts, including legacy debts, everything coming to a summary of 4 trillion naira. And they say that alone threatens shutdown of power infrastructure across the country, but we understand the federal government is making moves to avert that possibility. Presidency slams El-Rufai over plots to woo Buhari. Well, it's a fastest fingers first thing. We saw, like Queen Agaba was saying a while ago, how Atiku Abubakar Nasir El-Rufai, and a few other persons, including former governor of Imo State, Achike Udewa. All right, all of them visiting the Kaduna residence of the former president, and a couple of hours later, he was APC national chairman, also leading a delegation. Over the weekend, we were told that the former president's house in Kaduna had become a sort of political mecca. All right, let's see what that will do for these politicians going into 2027. But it just shows that former President Muhammadu Buhari has its relevance. You can't take that away, especially when you look at it from the standpoint of the fact that the CPC, all right, which of course was essentially the bloc that merged with other parties to form the now APC as we know it, all right, still has its loyalty for the most part to the former president, right? Okay, what more do we have here? It says ALGON. That's the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria. ALGON calls out AGF on LG autonomy stalemate. Isn't it interesting, Queen, how that all of a sudden nobody seems to be talking about local government autonomy anymore? Nobody is now asking what's happening with local government autonomy. Are the local councils now autonomous in practical sense of the word? I mean, you come from a local government.
I come from a local government. It's really very interesting that nobody is talking about. A couple of months ago, we were all over talking about local government autonomy, what are the, and, we've just closed up, discussions about local government autonomy. I come from a local government. As far as I'm concerned, I actually don't know much about,
including the name of your local government chairman.
No, I know my local government. I know my local government chairman. But as regards autonomy at the local government, I'm also wondering, just like you're wondering, why we stopped talks about local government autonomy, and but there were a lot of talks about having local government becoming autonomous would bring about a more porous system where while we talked about how making local government autonomous would, make we'll talk about even distribution of resources when local government are autonomous. But there were concerns around local government being autonomous would also bring about corruption, increased level of corruption and all of that. But I'm also wondering why we stopped talks about local government autonomy. Regardless, I think that the advantages of the local government becoming autonomous were outweighed, some of the concerns and some of the challenges that were raised. But for you,
well, it's interesting, right? One would have thought by now we'll be seeing significant commitments, all right? First of all, let's be clear, this is something that is squarely hinged on a Supreme Court ruling, is a verdict by the Supreme Court. And we all know, Queen, that the Supreme Court ruling is every Supreme Court judgment is an extant law, all right? It's a precedent. So if we are at this point not bringing our best behavior to this narrative, this conversation around local government autonomy, even in light of the Supreme Court verdict, question is, what exactly are we telling ourselves? And by extension, what are we telling the world? Because as of today, this has been several months. This was something that happened since August of last year. It's 8 months down the line, and it appears as if nothing of such ever happened. Or are we going back to the Supreme Court at some point to ask for interpretation of it? At some point, not too long ago, just a few months ago, we're told that, the local governments, councils need to do some paperwork with the CBN. They need to regularize their accounts. The CBN needs to see their books and blah, 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 blah. Did we start that process? Are we in the middle of it still, or are we done? Where exactly are we? Shouldn't there be KPIs of some kind?
Exactly.
In a way, I mean, by way of trying to see, or if you like, check or measure progress. But again, those are questions that are begging for answer this morning. Let's take you to the very bottom of the Punch newspaper this morning, everyone. Here, bottom left, it says, Nigeria's external debt servicing may hit $5.2 billion. That's according to Fitch. All right, and that is doing something around 8 trillion already. You find those details, as disturbing as they are, on page 23 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Family feud. Peter alleges Jude diverted 1.3 billion naira P-square earnings. They're in court now. The brothers against the brother.
Their fight.
You didn't hear that? The brothers against the brother.
The fight, P-square, their issue, you know, whatever it is they have has been long standing. You know, they settle.
Been a long time coming, right?
You know, we hear about the brothers. They settle. They come back. They, you know, they go apart again. Issues with their wives and all of that. And you know, it's interesting to note that one of the twin actually made away with 1.3 billion naira of their earnings.
Actually, that's even their older brother. That is accused of making away.
Okay.
Yes, that's yes, that's Jude, right?
Jude.
Yeah, exactly. That's Jude.
Peter Paul.
Exactly, the older brother to the twin, right? Who was their manager, their cinematographer, and everything at some point when the going was good. Anyway.
So it's now beyond the twin, and now
exactly, it's now the big brother.
Brothers. This is really very sad.
It is.
And you know, I'm just speechless because I hate it when families go to court, you know, siblings
over money,
over, you know, these sort of issues.
Right.
And, you know,
this one.
We look forward to.
All right, let's look at our last headline quickly, everyone. Buhari's ex-minister, still from the Punch newspaper, Buhari's ex-minister cautions Makinde on successor plots. Okay. Well, let's look at our last paper on the program this morning for the segment. Is the Nigerian Tribune, and Queen Agaba has those details for us.
Okay, on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, the big story says 51 feared killed in fresh Plateau attack. Rider says killings in Benue, Plateau State, genocidal war, MBF, and then it's an inexcusable security failure, according to Amnesty International. Resolve underlying communal issues in your area, President Tinubu tells Plateau Governor. And then, above the nameplate, Nigeria must pursue 10% GDP growth to achieve $1 trillion economy by 2030. And then, this is attributed to the GMD, UBA Bank. Solar. Nigeria spent 200 billion naira on importation of panels. REA MD. Rider says Lagos government, REA signed MOU on rural electrification. PDP governors say no to coalition dump. Dump Anyanwu Ude Okoye. Rider says name Deputy National Secretary in acting capacity. Vow to support Fubara till the end, and then party to hold national convention in Kano in late August. We have a picture of, I think, the FCT Minister, Nyesom Wike, inspecting ongoing construction in Abuja around the Life Camp to Karimo Road. Then, I think it says Maitama to Gishiri Bridge and Road, as well as rehabilitation of the International Conference Center yesterday. Lastly, we have, I think the International Conference Center, the rehabilitation has taken quite a long time. The conference center has been shut for over a year now,
right?
If I can remember, and
or close to it.
I think it's over 1 year.
International Conference Center.
The International Conference Center, yes. And then, you know, it's interesting to know that the project is still ongoing. And then
it's a long-term project.
It's a long-term project. Wow. 300 million naira hosting rights. Rivers State donation was a gift, says NBA, attributed to the NBA. I think these are the stories we have on the front page of our last paper for today. Highlighted here is the killing in Plateau State, which again we commiserate with the families who are bereaved. And in one of the papers we see that a family of 8 was wiped out.
Right.
That's an entire family, you know, wiped out. It's
maybe 2 or 3 generations.
2 or 3 generations, and it's heartbreaking to know. And then we see the president calling on Plateau State governor to fix whatever internal dispute or crisis must have led to
ethno-religious factors, he calls them.
It's actually a call to action and to ensure that there's never, we don't want to, I mean, it's sickening to use that word, to find out that these killings, these may not be the last. We pray there's never a reoccurrence, but our prayers is not enough.
Right.
We need action. Actions that are commiserate. That there's never a reoccurrence. The other time we talked about Oyo killing in Oyo in a church where, you know, people were murdered, they were butchered and all of that. And, you know, one would think that we would never have an occurrence like that, you know, anywhere, you know, with all of, where we were tired of having mass burials. We're tired of, you know, calling on the government, calling on security agencies. We're tired of seeing families, you know, cry about the death of their loved ones, of an entire family. And, you know, we just want the government to do the right thing. We're calling on Plateau State Governor Caleb Mutfwang to please weigh into this matter, and whatever dispute, whatever crisis that it is that needs to be settled should be settled, and whatever measures that should be put in place to ensure that there's never a reoccurrence, that there's never an attack of this magnitude again, should be taken. And, you know, we pray that God will give the families of the bereaved, you know, those who have been bereaved, the fortitude to bear this loss. And
you see, it's quite a heavy conversation to have, right? Because I know the governor, Caleb Mutfwang, had time and again declared state of emergency, especially in local governments that have been adversely affected by this madness, as I'd like to call it this morning. But question is, have those instances of declaration of, curfew really made much difference? What more should we do? Because it appears from all we're seeing now, there has to be a multi-layer approach to the way we deal with insecurity. Yes, we know governors across this country have complained that, look, we're just figureheads when it comes to security. We are not in charge of the security apparatus of the nation. That's in the exclusive lists. It's beyond us. The commissioner, of police does not report to me as a governor. He reports to the IGs in Abuja. The GOC of the army does not report to me. All of those guys who head the different military and defense outfits, they do not report to me. They report to their respective heads who are all domiciled in Abuja. Therefore, my hands are tied. Question is, as very concerning as that sounds, is it not also a way of saying we are helpless? Because you see, we must continue to give our people hope. We must continue to make them understand that we are not overwhelmed. We are not drowning. We have not drowned, and we will not drown. But again, that must be powered, that must be driven by sincere efforts where progress can be measured in real terms.
Absolutely. Sincere efforts where progress can be measured in real terms. I think that's a good place to leave this conversation. We'll take a quick break now, and when we return, we'll bring you the Global AM News, after which the conversation continues. Do stay with us.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues,
and at the same time keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Disbursing upkeep of 20,000 naira.
Know that you cannot talk about a healthy nation if you don't have means to produce your own in addition to importing.
The CG is the principal actor of this because it's within her jurisdiction. Minister is a supervisor.
We must run in accordance with the Constitution of CAN, where you will have just a single time.
The human factor, you have the infrastructural factor, then you have the mechanical factors.
The Senate, with all due respect, they were so hasty in passing that judgment.
The statement I'm about to make is we're not even aware.
That is the future.
You have to be aware before you can begin to be prepared.
Do you know that Global Television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch Global Television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to Global Television.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Hello and welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to the Global AM News here on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Queen Agaba. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365, on Star Times channel 276, and free to air on Nigecomsat. You can also download the Global TV Nigeria mobile app for Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcast. Vice President Kashim Shettima has commended Akwa Ibom State Government for adopting and localizing the Human Capital Development Framework, describing it as a model of visionary leadership and grassroots-driven governance. Speaking in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State capital, shortly before unveiling the Arise Human Capital Development Strategic Plan and the local government implementation roadmap, Shettima applauded Governor Umar Eno for taking bold steps in institutionalizing the Human Capital Development Initiative at all levels of governance in the state. A chief magistrate in the Rivers State Judiciary, AGK George, has tendered his resignation from service, citing unease over the appointment of a sole administrator to oversee the affairs of the state. George, who disclosed that he has put in 16 years in the judiciary, already says the appointment of a small sole administrator is tantamount to a quasi-military administration. George's resignation was contained in a letter and addressed to the Chief of River State through the Secretary of the River State Judicial Service Commission. The presidency has dismissed any notion of fresh revelations emerging from a United States court order directing the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Drug Enforcement Administration to release files on President Bola Tinubu's past investigation. It insisted that the records, which date back to a drug trafficking investigation in Chicago from the early 1990s, have been publicly available for over 3 decades and pose no fresh concerns for the president. This followed a ruling by Judge Beryl Howell of the United States District Court in Washington, D.C., who instructed both agencies to conduct searches and process non-exempt documents in response to Freedom of Information Act request filed by American legal researcher Aaron Greenspan. The sole administrator of Rivers State, Vice Admiral Ibok Ete Ibas, retired, has called on the Nigerian Bar Association (NBA) to refund the 300 million naira his administration paid for the hosting rights of the 2025 Annual General Conference. The NBA had previously reversed its decision to hold the event in Rivers State, citing the declaration of a state of emergency and the collapse of democratic structures in the state as reasons for moving the event to Enugu. In response to the development, Ibas stated, while the state respects the association's right to choose its conference venues, it finds it curious that the NBA, despite its principled position, has not addressed the refund of the 300 million already paid by the Rivers State government for the hosting rights of the 2025 conference. In another development, women in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, have staged a peaceful protest in support of emergency rule in the state. The women, all dressed in white, had earlier gathered at the Garrison bus stop in the city center from 8 a.m. to begin the rally. They were seen singing solidarity songs in support of the sole administrator, Vice Admiral Ibok Ete Ibas, retired, along Aba Road and marching towards the Government House, Port Harcourt. Governors elected on the platform of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) are meeting in Ibadan, Oyo State capital, to deliberate on pressing national issues. The meeting, held at the Executive Chamber of the Governor's Office at Godi Secretariat in Ibadan. Notably absent from the meeting was the suspended Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara. In the meantime, governors elected on the platform of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) have unanimously resolved not to join any coalition or merger as the 2027 elections approach. The PDP Governors Forum meeting held in Ibadan, Oyo State, was attended by key governors including Bala Mohammed of Bauchi, Peter Mba of Enugu, Agbu Kefes of Taraba, Dauda Lawal of Zamfara, Sheyi Makinde of Oyo, Caleb Mufwang of Plateau, Umaru Fintri of Adamawa, Ademola Adeleke of Osun, and Doyediri of Bayelsa. Governor Sharif Oberiworo of Delta and Umo Eno of Akwa Ibom were represented by their deputies. Senator Ali Ndume says the loss of over 300 lives in 252 attacks within the last 6 months by the Boko Haram terrorists in Borno State forced Governor Babagana Zulum to lead a delegation to seek help from military high command. Ndume, who spoke to journalists in Abuja, says the visit was a product of a series of meetings held between the governor and relevant stakeholders across Borno State. The senator, who was part of the delegation that visited the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, the Chief of Army Staff, and his counterparts in the Navy and the Army in Abuja, acknowledged that the military was doing its best despite being stretched. Oyo State High Court sitting in Ibadan, the state capital, has dismissed a suit contesting the nomination and installation of the Olugbon of Orile Igbon, Oba Francis Olushola Alao. In his ruling, Justice K.A. Adedokun nullified the case for lack of jurisdiction. 4 members of the Akimbola family who instituted the suit contested the selection, appointment, and approval of Oba Alao as the Olugbon The Bureau of Public Procurement, BPP, says it is collaborating with the anti-corruption agencies to ensure that the procurement process in the country is not compromised. The Bureau has also promised to publish a revised list of civil society organizations, CSOs, that the ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs, can invite to observe procurement processes. Director General of BPP, Dr. Adebowale Adedokun, made the disclosure in Abuja on Monday at a one-day National Stakeholders Interactive Workshop with CSOs in Nigeria on the current trends in procurement practices and their roles in procurement reforms. Former presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, paid a condolence visit to Plateau State following the recent killings in Bokos area of the state. A statement on X says Obi traveled from Abuja to Jos, the state capital, to express sadness over what he described as senseless killings and stated that such violence is unacceptable in a country not officially at war. You're watching the live broadcast of the Global AM News. When the AM News returned, UN economist projects 3% global trade shrink. We'll bring you details after the break. Please stay with us.
Do you know that global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to global television. Thanks for staying with us. If you've just joined us, this is Global Television bringing you live broadcast of the AM News. In business, International Trade Center Executive Director Pamela Coker Hamilton says global trade could shrink by 3%, with shifts to India, Canada, and Brazil due to U.S. tariffs. Here is Uyi Agbomofuegbe's report.
Similarly, the UN economist noted that Vietnamese exports are redirecting away from the US, Mexico, and China, while increasing substantially towards Middle East and North African markets, the EU, Korea, and others.
Countries like Mexico, China, and Thailand, but also countries in Southern Africa, are among the most affected alongside the United States itself. Global trade could shrink by 3%, with significant long-term shifts in trade patterns and economic integration. For example, exports from Mexico, which have been highly impacted, are shifting from markets such as the US, China, Europe, and even other Latin American countries, with modest gains instead in Canada and Brazil.
Citing the example of apparel, Coke Hamilton said textiles is a top industry in terms of economic activity and employment for developing countries. In this context, she said Bangladesh, the world's second largest apparel exporter, would face a reciprocal tariff of 37% should it come into effect, which could lead to a loss of $3.3 billion in annual exports to the US by 2029.
Bangladesh, the world's second largest apparel exporter, would face a reciprocal tariff of 37% should it come into effect, which could lead to a loss of $3.3 billion in annual exports to the U.S. by 2029.
U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled a massive tariff plan last week, with the White House later announcing a 90-day pause on what is now known as reciprocal tariffs for most countries, except China, which in turn decided to impose 125% tariffs on U.S. imports. Uyi Agbomofuegbe reporting for Global TV News.
Power generation companies, GenCos, have warned that power plants across the country were facing imminent shutdown due to a huge $4 trillion debt owed by the federal government. In a statement issued by the Board of Trustees, Chairman of the Association, Power Generation Companies, Colonel Sani Bello, the generation company says they are owed 2 trillion naira for power supplied in 2024 and 1.9 trillion naira in legacy debt. The companies noted that the plants were being paid less than 30% of monthly invoices for power supplies to the national grid. Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, has slightly lowered its forecast for oil demand growth on Monday, citing the impact of U.S. tariffs on the world economy. The Saudi-led oil cartel says in a monthly report that it now expects demand to grow by 1.3 million barrels per day in 2025, down from a previous forecast of 1.4 million barrels per day. The adjustment was mainly due to first quarter data and the expected impact on oil demand given recently announced U.S. tariffs. On the foreign scene, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, has announced a new rule requiring all foreign nationals who stay in the country for more than 30 days to register with the federal government. The directive introduced this week is one of the strictest immigration measures in recent years. The agency stated in a post titled Message to Illegal Aliens and tagged to President Donald Trump and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Israel has intensified its land and air attacks on Gaza, with artillery and air raids hitting several areas of Khan Yunis in the south. The World Health Organization says a Palestinian child has died due to disruption in medical care after Israeli forces bombed the Al-Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza City as global condemnation grows over the assault. Yemen officials say U.S. attacks near the capital Sana'a have killed 6 people and wounded 20 at the Houthi rebel group claims missile attacks on Israel's main airport. Yemen's Houthi rebels say the number of dead from U.S. strikes carried out overnight in west of the capital Sana'a has risen to 7 dead with dozens wounded. The strikes targeting a factory in the Al-Sawari industrial zone in the Bani Mata region led to the death of 7 citizens and the injury of 29 others, including 1 in critical condition. U.S. strikes targeted various other areas in the country, including the Sada and Hodeidah provinces. In sports, Nasarawa United players have been rewarded with 3.5 million naira for the matchday 33 victory over Plateau United. The announcement of the cash gift was contained in a statement signed by Eche Amos, Director of Media of the club in Lafia. Governor Abdullahi Sule and the State Commissioner for Youth and Sports Development, Kwanta Yakubu, handed out the cash gift to the players. Nigeria's Flying Eagles will begin their quest for an 8th continental title against Tunisia, Kenya and Morocco in Group B of the 2025 Under-20 AFCON in Egypt. The group stage draw conducted at the Egyptian Football Association headquarters in Cairo officially signaled the start of the 18th edition of the tournament that has long served as a launchpad for some of Africa's finest football talent. Running from April 27th to May 18th, this year's championship will feature 13 teams divided across 3 groups. Group A with 5 teams, while Group B and C will each include 4. The top 2 teams from each group, along with the 2 best third-place teams, will progress to the quarterfinals. Nasarawa United has been banished from the Lafia Township Stadium and fined 6 million naira by the Nigerian Premier Football League (NPFL) for repeated violations involving poor security and fan misconduct. The sanctions followed confirmed reports as an assault on Plateau United player Vincent Semitokwe and an attempt to harass match officials after the match day 33 fixtures between both clubs. In a 4-count charge, the NPFL cited Nasarawa United for breaching rules of the league's framework and rules. In the meantime, I beg your pardon, that's how much we have for you on global AM News this morning. Kindly follow us across all social media platforms using @GlobalTVNG and other handles now showing on your screen. You can watch Global Television on DSTV channel 365, StarTimes channel 276, and free-to-air on NigeComSat. You can also download the Global TV Nigeria mobile app for Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcast. I am Queen Agaba. Thank you for watching. Global Morning continues. Stay with us.
That global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world.
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to global television.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
When the National Assembly passed the anti-doping, legislative proposal into a bill that was sometime in June of last year, it was quite an excitement, given the promise that it held. But by the time President Bola Tinubu signed it into law, just this month of April, it became a dream come true for not just Nigeria as a country, generally speaking, but for, again, the sporting industry, for a country that has long yearned for clean sports, as it's popularly referred to. It was just that yearning that actually came to be. For many Nigerians who may not understand this, what it now says to us is that with the help of this bill, which has now been passed into law, signed into law by the president, it means that the sporting industry will be better governized, especially as it has to do with doping and countermeasures being taken against that factor, which has badly affected Nigeria's image on the global stage for several decades. But beyond sports, this bill also holds a lot of promise for the fight against illicit drug use in the country, which of course we understand that the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has been fighting tooth and nail to win the war against, but it's just not whole yet, even with all the efforts that are being made as it stands right now. So these are some of the concerns that we're having, and want to have this conversation this morning with somebody who is an expert in this particular field. I'm joined by Dr. Adeline Shuri Clinton-Agbo. She's a certified counselor and trauma expert. Sam will fail us to go into her profile this morning, given how widespread her tentacles are, professionally speaking. Dr. Clinton-Agbo, I'd like to say a big thank you to you for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you very much.
I know a lot of persons will be wondering what your business is with sports exactly, but quickly, let's talk about this bill in particular. I've spoken with experts, especially in the sporting space, who say that this is a landmark achievement for not just the sporting industry, but for our nation as a whole. Talk to us about the importance of this bill.
If I must say, I really got excited when I heard this. The nation generally has been going through just so much recently, and that has really affected the mental health of people. And talking about sports here, it's mostly the youths that go into sports, if you see that. And you can tell that our youths are really very much into drug usage, and that has really affected the sports industry. So I was really excited hearing that. I really commend the president for that, because it's going to help our youth to be able to do clean sports. And that brings Nigeria to a point of integrity, which is what everybody is looking up to. So that really is one of the things that is going to completely transform the sporting industry. And I know at a point there's been a limelight looking out to Nigerians, watching to see what becomes of the youths of the nations who are into sports, who are going into all this doping and all that. So this bill is really going to help us have that clean sports integrity out there.
People have said, look, Nigeria has never been lacking in terms of laws, whether they ground up the constitution or extant laws like this bill, for example. The argument is that the challenge always 100% lies in enforcement. Do you see any obstacle in that regard?
Well, I really don't see that. I believe that for this law to have been passed means Nigeria has a goal to achieve. Yes, Nigeria has a goal to achieve. Nigeria is coming to that place where they want the world to know that indeed we are a people of integrity. So I believe that with the help of all the professionals we have around, we should be able to enforce this. Yes, bringing in professionals who should be able to help the youths come out from this. It's not. I don't think it's going to be a very major challenge. I'm very, very certain that it's going to be enforced. Yeah.
Let's talk about the wider population now, because I think beyond sports, this is where the real issue lies. You mentioned at the top of this conversation, young people, right, whose lives have been negatively affected by use of drugs, illicit drugs, that is. Of course, we have seen operatives of the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, go all out to ensure that we continue to drive these fights, especially under the leadership of Brigadier General Buba Marwa, retired. But it will appear those efforts need to be not just consolidated alone, but they also need to be complemented, right? What can we do? What can we do to, beyond taking people off the streets, those who have been who have been addicted to drugs, beyond trying to get drugs off the street, beyond trying to deplete the drug markets, as it were, what can we do about the culture that causes people, the factors that drive people to be addicted to illicit use of drugs?
I think the first point here is, as people, we need to come off the stigmatization that goes on, if you look very well, you realize that for most of them who go into drugs, they are traumatized by something.
Right.
Yes, trauma has been the main cause of that. Most of them are really traumatized by something, so we should be able
it's not village people.
No, that's where we have a problem. People feel stigmatized, even being able to say, I feel depressed.
Right.
Yes, because depression brings them to that point. A lot of them get to that place, just like we said, with the state of the country right now. Financially, a lot of people are going through just so much. You've got fathers finding it difficult to meet up with their responsibilities, sending their children to school and stuff like that. You've got mothers unable to even make sales in their businesses because truly there's no money out there as such. And so that is affecting people and bringing them to a place where they feel it's a way of escape. And so they're getting into that. And I want to think what we could do right here is we've got professionals out there, we've got spiritual authorities out there. And most of these people actually belong to one religion or the other. So I feel it is now the place of these people in authority to be able to bring them close, develop a sense of empathy. In fact, I spoke with someone a few days ago, and I said, if we all could just come to a place of being empathetic towards each other.
So empathy is key.
Very, very key. It's going to help a lot of us come out from there's so many forms of addictions. There are those who are actually not into the drugs, but are into other forms of addictions, which are really destroying the society. So I want to think if we can come to that place where we get to understand these people are dealing with something, they're actually sick, mental health challenges they go through cause them to get into that place. If someone is actually traumatized by something, you don't expect him to relate normally.
Right.
Yeah, if someone is depressed and sick in there, you can't expect such a person to be in the right frame of mind to perform well. So we come to that place wherein, even in our organizations where we do work, we have bosses who are there who should be sensitive enough, maybe those in the human resource department who relate directly with their colleagues, should be able to identify, notice when one is depressed, when one is feeling withdrawn, just get to understand that. And out of the empathetic nature within you, you find a way on how to help. That will help these people come out from those things. So
it's interesting, quite a bogus conversation to have, I must admit. You mentioned the workplace now, for example, and then we have a culture that's very prevalent around here. People can easily relate with regular sicknesses or ailments. You tell somebody you have fever, whether it's typhoid or malaria, 2+, 10+, whatever plus it is, people can relate with those. Excuse me. Somebody is recovering from, let's say, surgical procedure, for example. People can relate with all those. But people can almost not relate in this part of the world, in our climate here, with things like depression, things like mental health challenge. We've seen people in the so-called civilized environments who would pull out of an international competition because they say, well, my mental health is not in a good place right now. I'm going back home. And over here, that sounds weird because it's not a culture we're used to. In fact, for us, it's a culture shock. How do we begin to do some sort of reverse engineering on that culture that we have in this part of the world?
I think part of what we could do is what we're doing right now. Trying
Advocacy.
to yes, get people to that point of understanding, just like I said, that mental health challenges is not a stigma. You know, people shouldn't get to that point where, because that's actually what is happening right now. You find it difficult to express yourself in that phase, just like you said, because cultural-wise, it's an abomination.
Right.
So we have to get to that place where we are able to let the world know, let our people know that it's not actually a stigma. You're not going through some kind of challenge, like we say, they spiritualized everything. Yeah, we don't get to that place. So I think it's also, like I said, we through our leaders, we've got people in authority in every sphere of life.
Right.
So I think what we should be thinking of doing is how to get these people aware, just create a sense of awareness, whatever way we can. Yeah, so these people get to know that they have to look out for each other. Yes, because that's what brings us to that place.
Looking out for each other becomes a challenge in light of the realities we're now dealing with as a people. I mean, I am relatively young. I remember when I was a little boy, say elementary school age, for example, it was normal for your mom to take you by hand to a neighbor several houses away, sometimes a street away, to say, keep an eye on my son or my daughter while I'm away. And your mom didn't have to be afraid of anything and all that. So we're really communal at that time in those days. That element, that thread has either broken altogether or is just on the brink now, right? Is there still a chance that we can go back to those good old days?
Yeah, you know, when you said earlier, you spoke earlier about the aspect of us living out here and seeing mental health as a problem.
Right.
I was also reflecting on that because we are Africans, and the African nature has to do with the communal life.
Right.
Now, we have found ourselves in this place, but I don't think it stops us from being able to communicate. We've found this place where at least there's the usage of phones today. So if you think you're too busy, you can drop a message. You can call. We've got family WhatsApp groups.
Right.
You can drop a message, check on each other, check up on each other. What's going on? How are you feeling today? And mean it. Yes, be sure. Sometimes you could just try to find out, let the person talk so you hear, because sometimes just writing, the person may not be able to, you may not be able to really get it, but hearing the voice of that individual could tell if the person is really in a good place or not.
Right.
Yeah, so I want to think those are other options, and I believe if families could start developing that culture, find a time to come together. In actual fact, if you look at it, you realize that Africa already had that space of helping out with this.
Even long before
yes,
that.
we already had that in place, because the communal life is one of the aspects that you need as an individual to come out from any mental challenge, health challenge you're facing. Yes, when you're able to go out and socialize, relate with your peers, somehow you get to talk, and that helps to heal.
Right.
You understand? So that was already in existence, like you said. You could go to your neighbor, sit there freely, eat without any problem. So by the time you're able to also come out there and relate, that is part of the healing. So it's like still taking us back to it, but in a different way. So we can always find a way to go about it. It's part of your healing. It's definitely a therapy if you have to come out from a form of depression. It's advisable you try to relate, socialize. Yes, it's part of the
You see, we live in a day and age, Doc, where you find that the use of drugs has radically evolved for the wrong reasons. Today you see pastries, you see confectionery, what have you, all of them, vegetable products, all of them being laced with all kinds of drug. We've seen them intercepted by the police, by NSCDC, by customs, by NDLEA, all of these agencies of government. Have we gone too far for redemption at this point?
Well, I really would say no. Yes. Why? Because, like I said, we have leaders out there.
Right.
You are a leader. I'm sure you have 2 or 3 people under you. Yes, everyone is a leader in one way or the other.
Right.
You're leading 2 people somewhere, you're leading 3 people somewhere. And if you're able to create that awareness, definitely we're going to go through with it. I think we just need to come from that place of creating an awareness. Yes, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. And people will get to understand. You know, a lot of these people don't even know the repercussion of using these drugs.
Right.
So many of them.
Like you said, it's an escape route for them.
Yes, they use it as an escape route. So a lot of them don't know the repercussions. So many are not even aware they take these things and that they go in there to destroy their organs. So many of them are not. And because they've gotten into it and they are now addicted, it's become a problem to even come out. And that is where professional help comes in. Like I always say, seek help. There are many ways of being helped. Someone told me, oh, we really don't have the money to seek professional help. And I said, you do have people around you who can help. You've got your pastor, you've got other leaders around you. Yes, the people who are really concerned, who will help you without taking a dime from you. So all you need to do is desire to be helped. And definitely help will come.
You look at the way people live overseas, for example. Somebody can wake up, sometimes even a superstar, megastar, whether in soccer, in music, or in movies, and just check into rehab voluntarily. No force. You don't need soldiers or some heavily muscled men to come carry you. You just check into rehab, and you even go to the internet to tell your fans that you checked the rehab earlier today because you feel your mental health needs to being revitalized or something, right? We don't have that culture here, for example, which is also a challenge. How do we now reverse the tide where it is not normal to even seek help? I'll give you an example. When I was growing up as a small boy, people who committed suicide were full-blown adults. Some of them grandparents, some of them parents, men and women, of course, with children. But these days, you hear undergraduates committing or contemplating or attempting suicide just because they failed a course in their second year, first semester, just because they are not impressed with their CGPA. These are not economic problems, are they?
Well, like I said, most of them are traumatized by something. Trauma to you may not be trauma to me.
To someone else.
Yes, and your reaction to trauma may not be the same as that of another. People react differently to trauma. So sometimes you find those people who are, we call them, when they get to that point where they're so depressed and they've gotten to the point of becoming borderline personalities.
Right.
They have borderline personality disorders. They are destabilized. So most of them, in one way or the other, have lingered in depression for a very, very long time. Yes.
The longer it goes, the worse it gets.
Yes. So what happens is, like they say, the last straw that hit the camel's back, that broke the camel's back. So that's what happens. They've lingered in it for a very long time, and then, okay, I just failed again. So it's been a long time, maybe trauma from childhood. I've always noticed I fail all the time, and my mom has always said I'm a failure. My dad has always called me a failure. Friends have always called me a failure, and it's been this way all the time. Oh, I thought I could just make it this time around, but it just didn't work out. And because I've been depressed with many other things, what happens at the end? This turns out to be the last straw.
A withdrawal.
So that's where we come in. You're a lecturer, you're a teacher. You should be able to identify children in your class, even as small as they are. We are being taught psychology in school, especially for teachers.
Right.
Yes, it's a course every teacher must go through. Why is that done? It's so we can be able to use it to help the children mentally. Yes, it's a holistic training that is given to every teacher. The challenge we have out here is that we don't tend to practice that particular aspect. Yes, so if at that level where the teachers can be able to use the psychology knowledge they've had when being trained, then you realize they'll be able to identify. I'm using just that example. They'll be able to identify those children. And just like I said, if we come to the place of your organization where you work, for example, you're able to also identify those people who are dealing with stuff like that. You can be able to help. And what we usually say is, if you're healed, then you should be thinking of healing another.
Right.
So if you get someone come to you, help counsel you, help take you through the process, and you come out of it, then you should be looking out for others who are like you. So if you found someone who is suffering from borderline personality disorder, for example, and you help them, then you should be able to help them help others. So that's exactly what I feel we can be able to do to help our society.
We're going to take a break shortly, but let's look at the systemic angle to this conversation right now, right? I have friends who studied psychology. I have friends from, social psychology, social works, and what have you, and all of that, counseling psychology, and so on. But our system here doesn't seem to place a premium on this field of practice. It's almost not possible for you to see, or I should say, it's not common to find trained career psychologists who are in private practice. It's not very common. Abroad, you hear people saying they are paying $150 an hour, especially in places like US, for example, an hour just to see a shrink, as they call it, right? And things like that. Now, we're not talking about the cost implication as an element. We're talking about the culture of it. Yes, there are people you can always talk to, whether in your family, amongst your cycle of friends, those you can trust, even at the workplace. That one person you can confide in, that one person you have built trust with over time, your spiritual guide, your life coach, or what have you. How do we also ensure that for those who are in the field of psychology as a career, as a practice, for example, they are better encouraged? Because I hear people in this field say things like, we're not valued here, that's why we want to move abroad. And when they move abroad, they see how much of value is placed on them. But again, that's unfortunately depletes the manpower back at home.
Yeah, like to me, I believe, like I told you, I got excited about this bill being signed, the anti-doping bill.
Will this bill address issues like this?
Yes, I believe it's going to do that, because even the anti-doping agency worldwide is bringing in counselors, psychologists.
From across the world?
Yes, that's what they're doing out there right now. So I also believe our government has that in mind. Because for them to have signed this bill tells you they have the plans of making use of the counselors around them. Yes, because it's definitely not going to be easy, like you have asked before, to be able to help these athletes do their job perfectly without having the right counsel. So, of course, I believe the government is thinking about that, to start bringing in counselors to do their profession rightly, which for sure would spread across. Because even if we start with just the sports aspect, it will spread. Take, for example, they're able to help out an athlete. That athlete will take it back to a friend.
Right.
Yes, who may not be an athlete, but then you see it's going to start spreading. I believe the government will definitely come up with something like that, because it's something really very important. Yes, we really need it. And talking of our culture, we have many different cultural aspects we can use to bring ourselves to that place. Yes. We've had festivals. We have so many festivals going on in Nigeria. We can use those places to be able to reach out to the people. We've got culture, like I know of the one that holds in Cross River every time. Every December, people gather.
Right, the Calabar Festival.
The Calabar Festival. Right. We've got the Yam festivals that do hold, and people to gather in places like that. So I think, just like I said, the leaders, take for example the chief or whoever is the leader in that area, could just take out a few minutes to let someone talk to the people. Yes, I believe that will help. That will help spread the news across.
All right, great. We're taking a quick break now, everyone. When we return, so much to unpack regarding this conversation. There's the issue of trauma and the call for those who aspire to hold political offices to be tested for drugs. Well, we'll talk about all that on the flip side of this break. Do stay with us. All right, Doc, I'm going to ask you this real quick. From the standpoint of trauma or being traumatized, we've seen cases where some persons committed infraction on the road. I mean, motorists, right? They committed traffic offense, and one of the penalties from the Federal Road Safety Corps was for them to go get some certification from a psychiatric hospital. Well, one would think, yes, ideally, that should be able to help keep motorists in check in terms of how they use the road, respect for other road users, and all of that. Is that overreaching? Does that not traumatize that offender, or is it a case of, well, that serves you right?
Oh, really? It's what ought to be done. Yes. The challenge, like we said, is the fact that people do see it like a stigma. Yes.
I mean, you have to show up all by yourself at a psychiatric hospital so and to get tested.
You know, because people do think that going to a psychiatric hospital means you're mad. That's the state. That's the.
I want to check my head.
Yes, it's just for mad people, but that's not it. When we talk of the psychiatric aspect, we're talking about your mental health.
Right.
Most of the times, why that is being done is because you actually need to be counseled. Yes, because most of them who do things like that on the road come from the place of some are traumatized. Yes, they come out from that place. Maybe they just had one challenge or the other, got one bad news, and mentally they were not sound enough to step out for the day. So that's the reason why they're being asked to go check. But because people think, see it as a stigma, like I said, we have to first of all try to see how we can clear off this aspect, get people aware that checking your mental health doesn't mean you are a mad person. Yes, it's just being healed holistic. You know, just like if I'm a Christian, and I'll definitely quote scriptures here.
Right.
So, you know, just like Paul said to the Thessalonians, he wishes above all things that they be in good health, even as their souls prosper, which means you need to prosper in every aspect of your life. And part of that is your mental health. So being healed holistically, you are able to go out there and perform better. If you have a very good mental health, you thrive well. In fact, you're going to help others because you'll be able to navigate your way through when you meet those who are going through mental health challenges.
Right.
Yeah, so I think what needs to be done, like I keep saying, is for us to find a way on how to create awareness. I think maybe our road safety leaders should find a way on how to explain this to individuals.
Right.
Yes, because another thing is the way it's being presented. Yes. You're caught in the act, and then you're told you're going to the psychiatric doctor immediately, without making you understand that we feel you have a mental challenge here and you need to be counseled, you need to be helped. Definitely when you get to see a psychiatric doctor, they should be able to know. They use therapists to help you. They find out, they'll be able to dictate what really the cause is, what level of mental health challenge
are you dealing with?
You're dealing with. So they'll be able to help you. So I feel it's part of the things. It's more like just create the awareness, present it in a way that the people feel encouraged to take such a step, not making them feel like you're a very mad man, that's why you're in the streets, and so we're taking you off to see a
two more issues before we're done. This is very emotional to even talk about. We now have young children, minors, being addicted to all of these things, for example. I don't know if there's a distinction between trying to help an adult, a grown-up who is addicted to illicit substance versus a minor, maybe somebody between 10 and 13, for example. Is that a peculiar case?
Oh, really peculiar in the sense that they are still very young, but they are laid down rules on how to handle every...
From a professional angle?
Yes, from the professional angle. They laid down rules on how to handle them. So all we need is to be able to get them come. It's just to be able to get them come. Like I said, the main challenge we've had is having them come. Yes, but if they are able to come, then just like you have doctors who are specialized for children, you have doctors specialized for children. Even within them, you do have those who are specialized for internal organs and stuff like that. Those for GOPD, those for, you have those different levels. Same thing applies in the psychiatric management. We have those specialized in particular things. So all we just need to do is get them come. If those children are able to come, then they will be helped.
Okay, so on the final note, we have heard calls. Now those calls are even becoming louder by the day. That everybody in this country, it's just a proposal, who aspires to hold an elective office, public office that is, should be tested for drugs prior to even being cleared by INEC, for example, to stand for elections. Is that going to, is that long overdue, or is just some sort of a pedestrian ambition?
In my opinion, I think that particular aspect was a very, very good idea. Because in the course of that, do you know there are people taking drugs who really don't know they are? Yes.
Those in public office?
Some of them, because they take these things just to feel relaxed. Maybe because of stress, they start taking
and the pressure of the office.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, they get addicted and they don't realize they're addicted. They keep feeling, oh no, well, I know once I take this particular medication, I feel okay. And because they have access to it due to their positions and all that, they just keep taking, they have access to the medications. So I think that particular, to me, like you said, maybe it's long overdue. Maybe we're really not using it like we ought to. Yes, that was also a very good platform. I think the government was already making for us to be able to create this awareness I've been talking about. Yes, because once they get there, they'll be identified and they'll be helped. Yes.
Great. Well, again, this looks like what somebody once referred to as a long walk to freedom, which means we have a lot of work to do regarding, one, changing the culture here. People need to seek help more, regardless of what options you have. Seek help. First of all, admit to yourself that you need help, all right? And then be able to get that help as quickly as possible. And hopefully, we can use all the resources available to us to find this help. I've been speaking with Dr. Adeline Shuri Clinton Agbo. She is a certified counselor and trauma expert, helping us find sense in the blessings that come with this anti-doping bill that has now been signed into law by President Bola Tinubu. Doc, thank you for your time and expertise.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
I'm grateful.
All right, we'll take a quick break at this point, everyone. When we return, we'll talk about regional development, how these several commissions that have now been set up across this country will help to drive growth and put Nigeria on the path of development in the real sense of the word. Do stay with us.
Do you know that global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to global television.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning. Do you know that global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to Global Television.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
All right, thank you everyone for staying with us this morning. Our second conversation will focus on regional development, what the trajectory has been the last couple of years with regards to the strategy being put in place, being driven by government, especially at the center, to pursue ambition across regions in this country. First was the Niger Delta Development Commission, and that has now led to a few other development commissions across this country. There are people whose position is that these development commissions will help to drive developmental projects across different regions in this country, if, with a big if, we do it right. So the question will be, are we doing it right in terms of the structure, in terms of leadership, in terms of clarity of vision, in terms of investment? And talking about investment, which is very key, no doubt about that, there has been concern as to whether it is enough to just establish development commissions without proper funding, without adequate funding, because at some point it became more of an issue of, well, if Queen Agaba has a development commission in our area, why should we at Mofwegben also have in this area? But the question is, are we doing it from a place of sheer necessity, or are we trying to be at some point politically correct?
That's the big question, because these days a lot of people just want to come up with an initiative, a commission, an NGO, and the motive, like you rightly put it, what is the motive behind most of this development commission that we're putting up? Is it just another avenue to siphon money, or it's coming, or it's born out of a need, a necessity, a genuine motive to maybe look into critical issues affecting people of a particular region, profile solution, help, bring about help, bring about hope? Or is it born out of selfish desires, or just the need to put your name down as someone who has come up with such initiative? So I think that's a question what bordering on. But many a times we see it's more like a competition. This person has a development commission, this person wants a development commission, even when it is not necessary, or it's not fulfilling or addressing significant issues and challenges. So
quite interesting. But you see, the bottom line of all of this would be not just the establishment of these development commissions. It would be how much of progress and impact they make on the lives of the people they were established to serve. We have seen instances of accusations and counter-accusations of corruption, starting with the NDDC, for example. Maybe it's too early to talk about the new ones, all right, like the Northeast Development Commission, like the Southeast Development Commission. But let's talk about the NDDC that had been there for a long time, all right, and all of the issues that came out of it in terms of allegations of corruption, somebody passing out during a Senate committee hearing, and all of that, leading to off the mic moments a few years ago, and so on and so forth. And there are people who believe that if development commissions are only going to just be more like a cesspool of corruption and allegations of corruption, then it means we do not need them. Therefore, the idea at all behind setting up these commissions must be justified. And then those who have been saddled with the responsibility to provide leadership for these commissions must also prove their own worth. Otherwise, it will look like we're just running around a circle.
Absolutely. I think you have rightly put it. Everybody must play their part and do the needful, so that we don't go about in rigmaroles. We don't have repeated occurrences of what we've had previously, so that we can see development beyond just the proliferation of development commissions. We can actually see actual development and progress.
Well, again, so much to talk about development commissions, including their longevity and lifespan. But we're taking a break now. Hopefully, all else equal, our guest will join us, who is a policy expert, to help us find sense in what exactly we have been able to achieve with the development commissions that we have set up so far, and what we hope to do more with them going into the future. Do stay with us, everyone.
Do you know that Global Television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch Global Television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to Global Television.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning. know that global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world.
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to Global Television.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
One of the several issues Queen Agaba and I touched on this morning as we opened the program was the state of the nation, particularly given the insecurity we're now seeing again in places like Plateau and then Benue states. So we understand those governors there, Governor Hassan Thalia of Benue and his counterparts in Plateau states, talking about Caleb Mufang, are doing the most they can given the circumstances, considering availability of resources. But it will appear that these criminal elements who are bent on just carrying out their carnage every other day are also not relenting, which means that we must get to rethink our strategies. We must get to take a second look at how we're fighting this. What exactly are we not getting right? What should we be doing differently? Like I mentioned a while ago, there's nothing we want to do has not accomplished in some other area. All right, what can you learn from them? But above all, most Nigerians are concerned as to whether or not we bring enough sincerity into this fight that we're doing. People have talked about how that there are politicians who have been fingers, there are politicians who politicize even the fight against these bandits and insurgents. But how do you have a state where, for example, the government is sincerely working hard around the clock, all right, to win the war against insecurity, and you have those who, perhaps because they are not in his party, because they lost against him, perhaps because they are in his party but are not aligned with him, all right, decide to become fifth columnist of some kind.
big question. But I want us to look beyond party and politics, particularly when it comes to the lives and properties of people, human beings. Like, you know, can we look beyond party affiliations, party loyalists, party, you know, look beyond it? I want to take, for instance, what played out between when Peter Obi, you know, went on X, former presidential candidate, went on X, you know, and says, you know, his life and that of his those that are accompanying him to Benue State cannot be guaranteed as a result of a statement by Governor Hyacinth Alia. You know, now the people who are at the core, who are focal in this conversation, are the people who have been displaced in Benue State, the IDPs. And here we are, we have someone who is, you know, making it a point of duty. I think for him it's beyond politics. Even if we want to say, okay, he's doing this to gain
popularity or traction or win sympathy.
Coming, you know, 2027 elections coming, but we need to normalize being empathetic. This is not just a cliche, like just being empathetic.
Election or no election.
Election or no election. Because now we think that any person, any human being who, you know, is tilting towards wanting to be kind, wanting to be good, wanting to empathize with people who have been victimized either by natural disasters or bandit attacks. We just think that such people are trying to, there's always a motive, you know. Okay, beyond the motive, whether politics or not, let's look at the bright side that the people of Benue State, you know, there's someone who is looking in that direction, you know, trying to proffer help in whatever way possible, you know, support some way. Can we look beyond? I think it's high time we look beyond the, you know, competition and look to collaboration. Over time, I'll give you a personal experience. You know, I had someone who at that time I think was a mentor who was doing something around etiquette and all of that, and then she was sharing her experience with me that in the plaza where she has her store or has her office, she just suddenly discovered that someone else doing the same thing, etiquette consultation, had opened a plaza, an office around that place and had her banner too, you know. And then she got really angry that why would the same person who is doing what I do come, you know, put up your flyer, put up your banner, put up whatever it is you have in that same building where I also have my office. And, you know, for the longest time possible, there was, you know, this friction between them, between both of them, particularly from her, because she was at that plaza first and was not happy that she has a competition. But, you know, maturity is understanding that both of you can thrive, both of you can be successful. And so she looked away from being competitive and looked at collaborating. Now they cover more grounds as partners. They are reaching more people, they're educating more people, the revenue, the income has, you know, increased because of partnership, because of collaboration. You know, it's interesting to know how much purpose one can fulfill when you collaborate. But, you know, politics, they say politics not just in Nigeria, but everywhere, you know, but we can do politics differently. We can look, you know, to collaborate regardless. If Governor Hyacinth Alia had welcomed, you know, Peter Obi, you know, I don't think people would have seen him any differently, because now the narrative is different. That, you know, it often boils down to, oh, why is politics involved in the lives, you know, at this crucial moment? I mean, 2027 is still far. You still have a lot of time to, you know, push yourself, push your narratives. But this time around, we're talking about humans and their lives. And then Peter Obi just coming from Plateau State, where he was received warmly by the Plateau State Governor, Caleb Mufwang, the neighboring state. And we expect same level of reception in Benue State, particularly because we're talking about lives here.
So sad. You know, I'm just curious, I'm asking myself, if Governor Caleb Mufwang, who is Governor Hyacinth Alia's, counterpart from neighboring Plateau, had said he was visiting, maybe to have a meeting where they could collaborate on maybe some sort of strategic border security between both states, for example, would he say the same? Would that same statement hold? All right. But again, like we said, let's not politicize an issue that has to do directly with human lives, because whether you like it or not, there's an exchange that is so strong between both states. All right. And take it or leave it, there are people who have suffered immensely on account of these lives that have been lost. Some of them are breadwinners. They left their aged parents. Some of them left their children. They left their spouses and extended family. And you know how it can be in Nigeria, where you have this communal living, people who depend largely on others from families and things like that. So somebody needs to reach out to them. Somebody needs to resource them. Somebody needs to provide some sort of support, sometimes psychosocial, sometimes material for them. And governments cannot do it all. You know, government would tell you always that, look, security is not one man's business. You cannot leave it all to government. Everybody must put their hands on deck. So why are we stopping someone from bringing two hands to the same deck?
Absolutely. Government should look beyond, you know, wanting to carry the burden alone, of which we don't see them carrying burdens, you know, and look towards partnering with individuals, corporate organizations, you know, to enable better living for the states, better living conditions for the states. Look at Benue State today. Let's not even talk about, you know, the current situation, the current state of Benue State. Talk about the, you know, the economy of Benue State. For now, we don't want to go into details of, you know, structures and all of that, but, you know, at least well-being of those who have now been displaced from the already, you know, bad situation in Benue State. And, you know, look, it's more like, how do we see in Lima when they see your helper, somebody stopping your helper or blocking your helper from, you know, locating, that kind of thing, from locating you rather. So I think government should, it's high time we look beyond competition, look beyond politicizing everything, to beginning to collaborate. That's why I think that is important, that as leaders, governors, whether politician be, you are first a human being before a politician. We should, you know, have some level of empathy for the people that we govern.
All right, great.
And just to add to the, you know, or the already, we've overemphasized, but it cannot be overemphasized, even if I think we've talked about security a lot and how much the government needs to do, how much individuals need to do. I would say to an extent that, you know, people would also need to start protecting themselves, but how, you know,
do you want them to do that?
How do you want them to do that? Because it will get to a point where people would say, people are already saying enough is enough. Okay, and we don't want to have a situation where we now begin to have intertribal wars. We now begin to, you know, because people can, if this is not curtailed, and this is to government and, you know, relevant agencies, that we need to declare a state of emergency in these states as regards security, because when people take laws into their own hands, we don't want a situation where these things escalate, because somebody would now see a Fulani man who has no business with, you know, whatever has been going on, going about his normal business, the normal activities. We have Fulanis in Benue State, we have, you know, Fulanis in Plateau State, we have people from other tribes, because there will be speculations, if nothing is done about it, that is people from a certain tribe
that are
responsible for all of these things, you know, headers, whatever it is. And people, the innocent Fulanis who are in the markets or from a certain tribe who are doing their businesses in this, they begin to go into their houses, kill them, and this situation will escalate. And we'll have cases of intertribal war, which we do not pray for, and we do not want to see it happen. But these are already, when people are aggravated, pained, you know, when they are agitated, you know, it's painful. Particularly, we just see a relative, you know, stand up who has lost 8 family members. We see in the news that a family of 8 was wiped out by these incidents, and then conducting mass burial. That's so much pain. And when people get to that point where they no longer care as a result of the pain, the trauma that they've had to endure because of this killing, they will do anything. We don't want a situation where people get to that point where they're not thinking anymore. We don't want to see that happen.
And they take the laws into their hands without thinking twice. So they just go in, they're not being rational at that point in time, because this is what these people, these headers, these killers, these bandits are doing now. They're not being rational. Because how do you go to a community, what have these people done, and you wipe out 51 people
eight family members, an entire family, and so people we don't want that situation where people are not rational anymore, because they will do anything, and we don't want to see that happen. We don't want to see this escalate beyond now. So we're calling on government and relevant stakeholders, agencies to do the needful.
Right, of course, there's no better way to put it than to say we must all do the needful, whether you're the federal government, your security agency, you're the state government, or you're even the governor, for example. And then citizens must also take responsibility. As they say, see something, say something. But I think from what I noticed in some neighborhoods, there are people who are even now more security conscious. You see somebody on your streets, around your house that you're not familiar with, you politely ask them if they need help or something. They're looking for an address, they want to see somebody. There's nothing wrong with that. All right? And then, of course, that can give you an idea as to what they are up to. All right? Estates people, estate leaderships are also now trying to raise the game by installing some sort of devices to help cut down on these incidences. All right? They are training their people better, training them differently, all in a bid to move with the trend. This is not a time to leave any stone unturned. This is not the time to leave anything to chance. We must all be proactive, we must be collaborative, there must be synergy, and then in the end, we believe very strongly that this will become a thing of the past. We'd like to say a big thank you to all of our guests. Well, we had one guest this morning who made our time to join us on the program to talk about mental health and what we can do to help ward off depression and all of the elements around it. But very importantly, we also appreciate our viewers who take our time every other morning to join us here on Global Morning. Just to also add that the views of all of our guests across all of our programs, including Global Morning, are their opinions. I'm Uyi Agmofebe.
And I'm Queen Agabado. Have a beautiful day ahead. See you again.
Welcome to Global Morning.
Death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
It depends on we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted with
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
The struggle with the ASU strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a life. The president never gave me any deadline.